and I think when you see the work of Ruth Gibson and Bruno Martelli, you'll see that what they're doing is working with an array of different forms, different disciplines within their work, and trying to solve some very interesting and difficult problems in the process, but with beautiful results. Just a few words about the company. They have been BAFTA nominated. They've received a Henry Moore Fellowship Award. They have toured all over the world. Their work, which was produced by the Barbican, Swanquake is currently touring the world and will be doing so for 5 years. They're truly international artists, and it's with great pleasure that I invite them to the university to talk tonight. Thank you very much.
I'm going to read a bit now. Our current practice examines the postmodern notion of simulacra. This concept is based on the idea that nothing is real. The world is a series of interlocking illusions, swimming in a sea of media-driven images and signs that are bewildering and ultimately uninterpretable. Our desire is to play in the spaces between the real and the imaginary, to provide a counterpoint to simulated landscapes via the human form. We exploit virtual reality to explore the relationship between the natural and artificial in both wilderness and urban environments. We are addressing problems and connections between interface and design, and the best materials to use to express ourselves. Our newer works deal with the unknown and the unattainable. We are trying to put the spectator in a position of privilege and discovery. Bruno, if you show the first few works. I'm just going to show a few of the works that we make together, and with huge teams of people, all the people that get forgotten. So I don't really need to explain, but this is how you encountered that work, with a trackball and two buttons on a CAD construction of a tree in this world as the interface. We can answer questions later on, but I'll just show you a gamut of things first. But your wall is intriguing. might have gone somewhere else. Yes. Fantastic. Vanishing visuals. Doesn't like it, does it?
Bad Steve Jobs.
And this was a recreation of the space we originally showed it in, made in the virtual world, then spat out again as printed ornaments. And this is the piece that Mary was saying is touring with the Barbican. So this is a room that you'd go into, but it doesn't really look very real because it's using the constraints of game engines, using the texture maps and upside down to have more speed in the way you travel through the works. But anyway, my work with Bruno requires an understanding of movement to understand space, material and immaterial. The knowledge and experience has led us towards creating environments for gallery spaces where the locus of the performance has shifted recently from the dancer to the visitor. In the construction of both the physical and virtual worlds. And thus far, we've felt the need to understand place at first hand and thoroughly engage with sight to then veer from this and create imaginary worlds. Our investigations have led us to remote parts of the world to connect to our immediate environment, be it a span of desert, an ice field, or an urban cityscape, to observe in detail our surroundings, even the architecture of the place where we live, which is where you saw that dancer in that room is actually where we live in London. These experiences of differing landscapes, familiar and unfamiliar, perhaps are forming a different umwelt, and I'm sure Philip will talk to me about that later, drawn from both the natural and artificial in the making of these real and fantasy worlds. And what's strange and brilliant about our lives of our artists, although it's been a real struggle and it's a constant challenge, we're totally practicing constantly, and our work has never ever fitted any category whatsoever. So we have always fallen off the stool, fallen between the stools of all these different practices that we bring together with teams of people, from programmers to dancers to many different animators and so on. And I'd say that what's happening in our work now, and we'll move on to it, is that basically the sort of borders between the disciplines have there's become this porous border where the disciplines, it's what's happening in between the disciplines and where they meet, which is a really interesting and fascinating side to the work. And ironically, recently I've been doing an AHRC fellowship about motion capture and a dance practice and visualising the data. And through the beginnings of this project, which I'll talk a lot more about later, what's happened is that you've seen in these pieces there's a console and there's a performer. And what's happened in the recent works is basically the performer's become the player. There's no console and there's no interaction. So we're just playing around with taking away things, putting things back, and so on. Bruno, if you'd like to show you next. I don't know how this is going to show out. We were commissioned to do the piece in a big factory, and what we got interested in was actually the thresholds of the space, so the doorways, and we really enjoyed this lift shaft in this massive factory in London. And so what we ended up doing was modelling the whole of the lift shaft, and then having a projector 4 floors up, projected down the lift shaft, so that when people were walking through the gallery space, the speakers were just above where they have the grill, the old grills and so on. Keep going in and out of my mic, and basically people would hear and look up and then be absolutely freaked. So it was a way of kind of, some people just walked through, didn't look at all up, and just went on to the next room. And there are a few pieces that we did like this, just to look at this non-interaction, because most of our work has a residue or a some interactivity in there of some sort, however you want to turn that. This was another piece that we put behind one of those reinforced glass plates with the lines in it, and we put basically a plug that was sparking, and people would go and have a look at this thing again with the sound. So all these works are made with game engines, so they never repeat. So more questions later from the next one as well. And this was, we did a skeleton of the entire factory, and we projected it on a double-sided, very, very thin film of back projection sort of, what's this stuff? I can't remember what it's really called.
Pop screen.
Pop screen. And basically people could see it from both sides and walk around. And also we made, this is a kind of strange example because you can see the strange colour definition here. But these pieces, we made a triptych of our journey towards a gallery, another commission we got, and it was our journey along the canal. And actually, none of these places were real, but everybody said, oh, that's there, that's there, that's there. People put their own idea onto the journey, and we presented them as three almost moving paintings. They were installed as these three works, and people would, and again, there's no repetition, and it's on the cycle, and an engine. So we're looking at the engine, the wonder of particle systems in the engine. So, the figure momentarily disappeared from these artworks, and the body shifted locus, like I said, for the player and the visitor to be the performer, as such. And the next piece, oh, this is a game mod. I can talk about this a bit later if you want, because everyone will recognise it. Well, I'll talk about it now. When we came 2 years ago to the As Yet Impossible Symposium that Mary organised, we were staying in the Holiday Inn and we looked out and we basically thought we were in Mirror's Edge. We just looked out the window and we thought we were in Mirror's Edge. So we thought, okay, if we're going to do a mod of a game, because none of our stuff is actually games, but just using the tools and wriggling all the rules out of it, we ended up having Faith flying, dying, soaring, just on a continual frantic state. So that's all right. That's our only mod so far. Next one. It's behind. Thanks, Bruno. Next one. These are all the little moving paintings in there. So it was really frustrating. So people went up to these, and actually quite a lot of them realised that they were game engines and were really, really frustrated at the fact that they were being denied play. So it's interesting. Next. So we come to the stillness project, the AHRC stillness project, which I was doing again with motion capture and dance. And the thing is with doing this talk, it's quite difficult in a way, is that a lot of our works start at different points, and so they sort of feed into one another. So we'll be starting one project and we might end up doing another one. So like with the Summer Branch project, we started that, we started the Swan Quake project before the Summer Branch project, and so this is what happens. So I'm going to be flitting backwards and forwards, which I am anyway. But the next piece that is our finished touring last year, this is when we thought, okay, you know, let's get the console back in and keep the figure out. But maybe what I've been learning in looking at the motion capture and this dance practice together, to see whether some of the imagery from the teaching and the feeling states could be put into some kind of, not necessarily weather system, but some kind of particle system within the world. And Bruno shows, yeah. So we were looking at movement and stillness in nature, and this piece is called Visitor, which is composed of two works: Where the Bears Are Sleeping, which is of this video, and Vermilion Lake, which we'll see a bit more of later. And during the making of this, this is when this other research happened, which is a kind of a weird thing for an artist because you're constantly making and making, but to actually have this undercurrent of research happening at the same time, in a way, it's no wonder the figure was lost or was extremely as still, not that stillness is still, but we're just looking at this relationship between figure and landscape still, character and environment. Or in fact, environment as character as well. Lots of people talk about avatars, and I think the term's really weirdly used, and I also think virtual is also really weirdly used, so I'm sorry if I just keep saying that. I don't know. Maybe some people here have a better idea of those kinds of things. So we decided to, we were in the BAFTA Centre and we were filming all around, which is where the bears are sleeping, the little bit of video you just saw. And we were travelling around videoing in quite a lot of the landscape, again to understand where we were, to then make the 3D environment. The area was so large, we'd got the height map data from NASA and we built it from that, but the area was so large that we decided to sync Banff and make Banff, the centre of Banff is in the Rockies, there's also in Scotland, but, and so what we decided to do was sync Banff, and then of course all the mountains became islands. And we also ended up started to get into the physicality, again a little bit like the rooms of the Swancraig house that you saw, the urban decay. This was a trapper's cabin that we wanted to replicate. Full-size trapper's cabin. Everywhere we go, whenever we've done projections, there's the hideous black curtain scenario, or some way of getting rid of the light. Everywhere we're always offered beautiful spaces like this with loads of glass and so on. So we decided, hey, why don't we just project inside a building that we built? So we did that and toured it. It was difficult to tour, but fantastic. And then we made a boat. So that people could row around this environment and experience This is just in case you don't think it works. Dance project, and I'll just talk a little bit about that because this started at the same time as this project was happening, and there's lots of things we were taking on board. The project seeks to find out how skinner releasing technique, a studio-based dance practice, can be motion captured, generating new visualisations for immersive interactive environments to offer new insights to the experience of sensory and kinesthetic awareness. At the core of the research process is a rigorous studio-based artist-led practice which straddles and negotiates with a number of different discipline areas and theoretical frameworks which has shaped our research questions. The relationship between the movement practice, performance and motion capture touch upon the project's central challenge of bringing together two practices, skinner releasing technique and motion capture, which have never been brought together before, whose union can only be fully realised, I believe, within an immersive environment and by those who view and participate in it. And just to give you a background on the dance technique, it advocates for a kinesthetic experience which relates to the scientific notion that we are all ultimately psychophysical systems of energy, an energy system within the larger energy systems of the universe. SRT is not a generic releasing technique, but by employing particular poetic imagery, goes beyond the tissues and accesses the unconscious to explore the unexplored in individual movement creation. The imagery cited in the pedagogy alludes to the natural world, and spontaneous movement is evoked through sensory imaginings. SRT accesses what is to occur and what has not yet happened, and draws upon the concepts of things such as constant becoming, just being, influx, emptiness, nothingness, dynamic stillness. And it's a really powerful, I've been practicing it for many, many years, and it's a really powerful improvisational technique which taps into different feelings and sensing states, facilitating expression, freedom, nuance, and a potential for change. And the practice promotes the idea that nothing is fixed, a creative exploration of technical principles such as multidirectional alignment, suppleness, suspension, economy, and autonomy. So there's no up or down in the practice. There's no right and wrong. There's no tightening. And I've got loads and loads of language and verbs I can show you later if you're interested in that part of the practice. But what's interesting for us is whether we can build some kind of kinesthetic awareness in the installations that we make, in both the way in which people receive the work and how we can do that. And just briefly been in a conversation with Philip James, and it's really, we are really now looking at, lots of things here have been about control and about implementing ways in which things can be out of control or surprises. And the dance technique is so interesting because it really challenges your habitual nature of moving. So it makes you, sometimes when you do the classes, you feel really uncomfortable because you've gone to a place you might never have gone before, like a child, for example, and to sort of, we're looking at trying to transfer these things. So what happened in this project is the feeling states ended up going into the mist. And class 2 of Joan's pedagogy, she has 15 classes of introductory. She talks about the white mist spiraling around the bones and so forth to actually conjure up this incredible experience. So we were really in the throes of capturing 16 dancers in a motion capture studio doing this, which we'll come on to later, and this is kind of what we got. So I don't know if you'll be able to see it very well. So Joan often talks about atmospheres or so on within the dance classes as feeling states. And it's really subtle. Can actually anyone see that?
Yeah.
Can you? I'm good. What can you? It's quite interesting this, because we're going to do a residency at Christie, so I'm not sure we're going to use the tiles. Are these Christie tiles? Yeah, so it's really good practice for us, because we're seeing how the gamma and the different things are doing quite different colours and blues and reds and so on. So yeah, so we made this little character that's like a misty character, a smoky character made of particles. It's very, very hard to see. So that little piece of smoke, the smoke or mist, or however you saw it in the last piece, is actually this data. So I was in Australia and I managed to be in a fantastic studio with 24 cameras and remote capturing as well. And, so I really concentrated my whole time on this image of white mist, as crazy that may seem. And this is one of the dance pieces. You have to remember this is improvised. It's not. I've done the other works that you saw earlier, the forest project and so on. All that stuff was rehearsed and choreographed, and the forest project was actually captured outside with an animazoo kit, so that there was uneven terrain. But they're very old projects, and for this I wanted to look at just the difference of visualisations, how the movement can be really, really altered with different visualisation. And even a graph of the data can be fascinating to some people as data visualisation. So we had 16 different dancers from all over the world and 5 programmers, and using emotion analysis and a Vicon system, Unity and UDK for some of the projects. And Bruno's going to show you our app, which is nice. Hope we can show you that today because it's new. But there's something about this idea of transferring this kind of poetic imagery or this sensibility or this kinesthetic state into an immersive world, and how we can do this because, in a way, data's data. So, I'm just going to read a bit more here. Digitised dance cannot capture itself free of interference from the capture medium. So, digitising dance often involves a complex series of protocol negotiations which create an excess of data. And this data is immanent, transcendent, and the new dance is created in excess of the dance being digitised. And that can be perceived as not visual. So there's loads of ways where this project can go with that, and lots of people want the data. People really want this data because it's of a specific dance technique where you roll on the floor. How many times do you see Gollum rolling on the floor? Not very much, because actually it's really hard to capture when half your body is occluding the markers from all the cameras. So there are all these motion capture things. I mean, Randy Cook, amazing, it's his real name, from a magazine I could pull out a quote, talks about how often in films and in CGI films, they call it restraint, and I call it readiness, and Joan Skinner would call it readiness, which is the stillness. And between the two characters, when he goes from one to the other, there's a moment of stillness, and it's really, really powerful. And I think a lot of people that work in this area don't really value that temporal, again, leading to discovery, whether something's here or whether it really takes a long time, where your empathy's lying, and all those things are being looked at a lot in the films. And so the Capturing Stillness project, in a way, is quite right, because a lot of Joan's work comes to stillness, and from that can unleash a massive power, like a snake that bites, out of nowhere, something can happen. And this is the kind of thing it encourages. It's not just, which I think a lot of people perceive it to be, or lots of generic dance techniques, like I see Kai who's frowning with the, you don't So it made us think about this idea of a technokinetic body, which in fact Erin Manning talks about, and which emerges through technology rather than pre-existing. So we believe we're at a really strange stage in the research, in that where we're looking at the not necessarily the individual gesture of the dancers, but whether there's this gestalt of grace, which is one of Joan's principles, which is this a kind of primal quality within, and whether that can be ported to the way in which we use different consoles a bit later. There's a bit of rolling, if you want to see a bit of rolling, we can see a bit of rolling, taken from the top. So we've got lots of little tests like this. Next. This was Nicola, and Nicola was given an image in the studio, which was loose bone dance. And this was one way in which we visualised this piece. So it's just, each dancer did at least 8 takes. So we have an excess of data. Cage's music, by the way, for the presentation. Just in case. So this is Nicola again, and the same image as the loose bones, but it's a different take. So I guess really, I might read a little bit more. The manipulated moving image has the ability in real time to open up perceptions, senses, kinesthetic awareness and engagement. The immediacy inherent in the video game environments, which is our choice of tool, and the readiness cited in Jones' pedagogy invite play and discovery. And I don't for 1 minute think that virtual environments can replace the theatre or anything like that, or live performance. But the visualisations that we make, I think, can awaken those, that thrill a little bit more, and awareness of orientation and displacement. So at the moment we're looking at, probably it's always a bit weird to talk about stuff that you're not about to do, but maybe it's quite the juicy stuff. We've been looking for a long time at planetariums and domes as spaces, and also caves as spaces, not real caves, but we could do real caves. And we're touching on things. At the moment we can't get our code to work in the engine that we want it to work in. So that's our problem. We wish we had lots of PhD programmers to help us. That's kind of crucial to us at the moment, and it's really high up in Epic, because we use UDK, where we're trying to get them to implement this. This is an ongoing thing with us, because one of our programmers is with Epic. So we started to work on, I'd like to just show you a little bit of Kirsty's, which I think you've seen a lot of experimentation, you've seen a lot, probably terribly confusing, but so that's fine. So this image was the Axel Shadow, and Kirsty Alexander, who's an incredible skin release dancer, worked with us on this, and we're thinking about projection in the dome, but we're also thinking about not mobiles, tablets, just ways of moving. A lot of people more and more are coming back to the body. I feel a bit strange saying it, but dancers have known that makes something bigger. Do you know, it's larger. Yeah, we know, we kind of understand. It's kind of like a tacit knowledge. I'm not saying that we know, whatever, but it is something that we can engage with. How much space is behind us? We are, in a way, weirdly trained for that. So to implement some of the experiences of these dancers working with motion capture, which is really difficult, like going to the floor normally in a dance class would be fantastic. You'd use it as another surface to go into, but that idea of it being slightly limited through the motion capture, the idea and how those two things have met, to me, are like interfaces are. And so we're looking at maybe having some kind of haptic interface with the dome or planetarium scenario. And Joan talks about a hammock in her work, and the curve of a hammock, and the curve of a spine, and all the different domes in our bodies, and all these kinds of things. And without getting to like it sounding hippie, we thought it is sounding hippie. We thought this would be really interesting as a interface, because what do you do normally in a hammock? You'd relax, you'd stop, you wouldn't enter into a game environment. So to have maybe in a dome this experience where you might be able to have control, you might have no control, we don't know yet, but that's where we're at. And again with the ideas of a tablet as well, and of just having those kinesthetic responses on the tablet. I mean, there's lots of things about, I'm sure lots of you here know what those things you can skip to. This might be where we're going, but you can turn the sound down.